Warm greetings from the Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering, Rajiv Institute of Technology, Hassan. We welcome you all to the fifth day of Faculty Development Program on Advances in Signal Processing and Wireless Communication in association with IETE Mysore Center. Let me introduce to you today's speaker, an young mind, Dr. K.S. Shivprakasha. He is currently serving as professor in the Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering at NMAM Institute of Technology, NITTE. He is having teaching experience of nearly 15 years. Presently, he is guiding 4 PhD scholars under VTU. He has co-authored the book Information Theory and Coding under Vilay Publication. The total number of articles indexed in Google Scholar are 37 with 78 number of citations with H indexing of 5. His research contributions are published in 11 international journals, 18 international conferences and 12 national conferences with 14 Scopus indexed publications. He is a reviewer for the journals Wireless Communication and Mobile Computing, John Wiley, Wireless Networks, Springer, Cogent Engineering, Taylor and Francis Group, UK, International Journal of Computer Networks and Communications. Dr. Shivprakash is a co-editor for the journal Australian Journal of Wireless Technologies, Mobility and Security and guest editor for SN Applied Sciences, Springer. He has the professional memberships as Senior Member IEEE, Member Institution of Engineers, Life Member ISTE, Life Member ISSE and Life Member Kannada Sahitya Parishad. Sir, thank you very much. We are very eager to hear from you.
Good morning everybody. Myself Shiva Prakash, Professor, Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering, NMAM Institute of Technology, NITTE. First of all, I would like to thank Rajiv Institute of Technology, in particular Dr. Arvind, HOD Department of EMC RIT Hassan, and Yashwant, the faculty at Department of EMC RIT Hassan, for giving me this opportunity to present a few details about error control coding in a communication system.
This is the outline of today's presentation. We will start with an overview of information communication system. I'll be defining what information source is. Then we will discuss about channel coding, in particular linear block codes and convolution codes. Let us begin our discussion with an overview of information communication system. This is the general block diagram of any information communication system. The first block in the block diagram is the information source. This is a system where the message is being generated. Therefore, the information source generates messages in the form of symbols. Therefore, they are analog in nature. However, for digital communication, we need to represent that analog information in the form of an encoded sequence, and that operation is performed by source coder. That is why the output of the information source is given to the source encoders, which receive the symbol coming from the information source as the input. They encode the information source and convert them in the form of a binary. In general, it is a digital sequence. Okay, so if it is a binary system, then it will represent the symbol in the form of a binary sequence. Okay, so let us restrict our discussion to binary representation. Therefore, the output of the source encoder will be a binary code sequence for each of the symbols that is emitted by the information source. So here the information source emits the symbols that is analog in nature, and that has to be represented in the form of a digital sequence, and that job is performed by the source encoders. Source encoders not only does the encoding of the symbols, but also they have to assure that the encoding is being performed using as minimum number of bits as possible. That means they also perform compression. Sometimes we used to represent compression as source coding. Okay, so source coding is a process of converting the symbols into its digital equivalent in the form of a digital sequence, and we also have to assure that this operation is performed considering the minimum number of bits to represent the symbols. Once the symbol is encoded, before sending that information into the channel, we need to perform one more type of encoding, that is called as channel coding. So channel coding is different compared to source encoding in the sense that in case of source encoding, we are trying to represent the information with minimum number of bits possible so as to assure compression. I will not be detailing source coding process in this presentation. Okay, so that is a method of representing the information with minimum number of bits possible. There are various ways of doing that. You can either use a fixed length encoding or variable length encoding. Okay, so variable length encoding process is advantageous compared to fixed length encoding, because in variable length encoding we can even make use of the statistics of the symbols in order to encode the symbols. Okay, so those things we will not be discussing in detail in this presentation. However, the output of the source encoder will be a digital sequence. Okay, and that is given to another type of encoder called as channel encoder. Here the channel encoder does the job of adding some calculated amount of redundancy so as to facilitate the receiver to detect and correct errors, if any, during communication. I repeat, as the information is being transmitted over a channel, and that too if it is a wireless medium, it is more susceptible to noise. Okay, therefore there has to be a mechanism devised so that the receiver should able to detect the errors, if any, during communication. Okay, so that job is performed by channel coding, right? So we will be detailing what channel coding does in the later slides. So that is what channel coding does. So it takes the information. So here input to the channel codes is the output of the source encoder, which is already in digital form. Okay, and output of the channel codes is again it will be in digital form, it because it has taken the input, which is nothing but the output of the source encoder. It adds some parity sequence to it so as to form a code vector again, and that will be then modulated using a modulation technique, and then it will be transmitted over a channel. Okay, and exactly the reverse process takes place at the receiver. Whatever is received, it will be first demodulated. The demodulated signal, which is again digital in nature, will be given to the channel decoding. Channel decoding does error detection and correction depending upon the type of the channel coders being used. The output of the channel decoders is given to the source decoder, where that digital information will be converted back to symbols, so that that information, that actual message will be then conveyed to the sink. Okay, so this block diagram represents the complete process of conveying an information from the information source to the sink. For the sake of completeness, let us first define information source formally. Then we will be discussing channel coding and decoding process in detail. As I have already mentioned, an information source is a system that generates information. This is the image of a famous mathematician, Shannon, who has given a mathematical structure for information theory. Before his landmark paper that was published in the year 1948, we were not aware of quantifying the information that is generated by a source. So, he in his paper has given a mathematical model to quantify the amount of information conveyed by any event. He has given various uh, properties that an information has to satisfy. They are: the amount of information conveyed by any event is inversely proportional to the probability of its occurrence. That means to say, the event that is more likely to occur conveys less amount of information, and the event that is less likely to occur conveys more amount of information. Okay, say for example, during monsoon, getting a rainfall of around 20 centimeters in a day at Karkala may not be conveying as much information as the city Bengaluru getting a rainfall of 5 centimeters a day, because Karkala getting a rainfall of 10 or 15 centimeters a day during monsoon is more likely occurring event than Bengaluru receiving a rainfall of 5 centimeters on a particular day. Okay, so the event that is more likely to occur conveys less information, and the event that is less likely to occur conveys more information. Therefore, the amount of information conveyed is inversely proportional to the probability. The information conveyed cannot be negative, but it can be zero. And when the probability of occurrence of the event is 1, then the amount of information conveyed by that event is 0. That means to say, a definite event conveys no information. Similarly, if there are independent events occurring, then the amount of information conveyed collectively is simply equal to sum of the individual information contents. Putting all these things together, there is only one mathematical operator that would satisfy all these conditions, that is the log operator. So he has devised a mathematical expression to obtain the amount of information conveyed by any message. So he is called as the father of modern information theory because of the fact that he is the one who has formally given the mathematical modeling for information theory. So we will now move on to the concept of channel coding. Let us first look into some of the applications where these error control codes, channel codes are also called as error control codes. Okay, so let us first look into some of the applications where these channel codes or error control codes are being used. This is one of the applications where, if you observe here, so this is for a satellite communication system. We have mentioned the satellite there, frequency, polarization, symbol rate, transmission, modulation. Along with that, we also have made a mention of a parameter called as FEC. FEC corresponds to forward error correction. Okay, so that is the type of the error control coding being used in this particular technique. This is another application of error control coding We use error control coding even in storage systems. This is an example of a DVD. We also use error control coding even in pen drives or any other storage devices. Some part of the memory is reserved for that operation. In order to understand the necessity for error control coding, let us consider this scenario. Suppose that we have four possible symbols emitted by an information source, say A, B, C, and D. The output of the information source will be given to the source encoder, where the symbols are encoded into digital sequences. As I have already mentioned, we are restricting our discussions to binary. So the source encoder allots binary code sequences to each of the symbols. We have four symbols. Using fixed length encoding, we require 2 bits to represent the information. We require at least 2 bits to represent the information. Let us assume that the code sequences for the symbols A, B, C, and D are 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1 respectively. Now consider the scenario where the channel encoding is not being done. Okay, so we have a source, the output of the source is given to the source encoder where encoding has taken place. Okay, and after encoding, let us assume that the channel coding is not there. So we modulate this sequence and send into the channel. If that is the case, let us consider a sequence, information sequence A, B, A, D, D, A, C is to be transmitted. Therefore, the corresponding code sequence for that message, which is 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0 would get transmitted. Due to the noise that is there in the channel during communication, some of the bits went wrong. Although we have transmitted the sequence 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, we have received a sequence 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1. You can observe here we have 4 bits going wrong while receiving. Okay, so now let us see whether the receiver can able to identify the error. Okay, so this is what is received at the receiver. So now receiver has to perform decoding operation. For decoding, the receiver also has to refer to the same table which encoder has referred in encoding the sequences. So receiver also have the code sequences for each of the symbols that are emitted by the source, that is A, B, C, and D. And it also knows that each symbol is encoded using a 2-bit binary sequence. So the code word length for any symbol is 2 bits. So what receiver does is it receives 2 bits at a time. It takes 2 bits at a time from the received sequence, okay, and performs decoding by referring to the table, code sequence table, and decodes the corresponding symbol. Okay, so it receives the first 2 bits, that is 0, 1 in this case. Although the transmitted bits were 0, 0, you have received 0, 1 because of the noise being induced during communication. So there is an error. Unfortunately, when receiver compares this 0, 1 with the table entries, it could able to find 0, 1 as one of the entries, correct? Because 0, 1 is also a valid code word and the corresponding symbol is B. Therefore, receiver detecting the error, instead of detecting the error, it incorrectly decodes the sequence 0, 1 as symbol B. because 0 1 is also a valid code word. Similarly, the next two bits are 0 1, that will be again decoded as B. Next two bits are 0 1 again, which is again incorrectly decoded as B, although there is an error during communication. Next two bits received are 1 1, which will be decoded as D. Similarly, the remaining symbols will get decoded. Therefore, we will get a decoded information as B, 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 D, C, A, D. And if I compare that with the information that was sent by the sender, we have incorrect decoding being done, right? So the receiver was unable to detect the error. Receiver was unable to detect the error. Okay, what is the reason why the receiver could not able to detect the presence of error? Even though there were errors in the received sequence, the receiver could not make out that error is present. Instead, it could able to decode the complete information, but the decoding process was not proper. Decoding was not proper. Why this has happened? This has happened because there is no redundancy in this particular case. That means to say, whatever the combination of 2-bit sequence the receiver receives, that corresponds to a valid code sequence. Correct? We have only 4 possibilities of 2-bit combinations: 00, 01, 10 and 11. Okay, and each of these combinations represent a valid code sequence. Therefore, whatever the 2-bit sequence the receiver has received, it has an entry in the code sequence table, so that it can able to decode that sequence irrespective of whether that sequence is properly received or errors are there in that sequence. Okay, so this is the drawback. Okay, so this is the case where channel coding is not used. Now consider the same scenario where we add one redundant bit. Okay, so we will add one redundant bit so that we induce some redundancy in the code sequences, and then we will see how the error detection could be possible by the receiver in such a scenario. Okay, so now we will move on to the second scenario. As I have made a mention in the previous slide, the receiver could not able to detect the presence of error because of the fact that there was no redundancy. All possible combinations of 2-bit sequences was leading to a valid code vector in the previous scenario, right? So whatever the receiver has received, it has an entry corresponding to that sequence in the code vector table. Okay, so that was the problem. So it could not able to make out whether that was indeed a sequence that was actually sent by the sender or that was an erroneous sequence being received. Okay, so in order to overcome this situation, one of the ways of making the receiver able to detect the presence of error is induce some amount of redundancy while transmitting the information. Okay, so in the last case we had taken 4 possible sequences, hence we have used a 2-bit representation for each of the symbol. Okay, so there were no redundancies in the previous scenario, but here we induce some amount of redundancy. So let us add a parity bit to each of the sequence. Okay, so let us add either a 0 or a 1 depending upon the sequence, such that the number of non-zero elements in the sequence should become an even number. That means number of ones in the sequence should be an even number. It should be either 0 or 2. Okay, so correspondingly the new set of code vectors will be 0 0 0. The sequence was 0 0 and the parity bit is 0 because it is already even. Then the second sequence was 0 1, the parity bit corresponding to 0 1 is 1, so the new code sequence becomes 0 1 1. Similarly for C, the code sequence was 1 0, we have a single 1, so the parity bit is 1. Similarly for the last case D, the code sequence was 1 1, already it is even, so we need to add 0, so 0 will be the parity. Okay, so now we have got the code sequences of length 3. This is a fixed length again. However, now the length is not 2 but the length is 3. What is the advantage here? With the 3-bit sequence, we can have 8 possible combinations. Correct? So with 3-bit representation, we can have 8 possible combinations, out of which 4 are valid combinations. Correct? So out of 8 possible combinations, only 4 are valid code sequences, and the remaining 4 are not valid code sequences. They are not valid, they are not used as code sequences, right? So therefore now the receiver has an option. Okay, so if the receiver receives any of these code sequences, then it can able to decode the sequence properly. If the receiver receives any other sequence other than these 4, then it can make out that that was not sequence sent by the sender. Okay, so the receiver can able to detect the presence of error in such a scenario. Correct? So let us validate that. Let us consider the same sequence which we had considered in our previous case. So let us say the message ABADDAC is to be transmitted. Then the corresponding bit sequence is given. Okay. So now let us induce some errors. So let the receiver stream be 001, 011, 010, 110, 100, 000, 101. Now let us try to decode the information. So now the receiver has a new table, correct? Because each of the code sequence is of 3 bits. So receiver also has the table which the sender has referred to for encoding. Therefore receiver takes 3 bits at a time and tries to decode the message sequence. Okay. So the first 3 bits are 001. The first 3 bits are 001. Okay, so 001 is compared with the entries in the valid code vector table. If you observe there, 001 is not corresponding to any of the valid code vectors. Correct? 001 is not there in that list. Therefore, receiver is unable to decode the sequence, decode the information, right? So therefore, as it is not matching to any of the valid code sequences, receiver will understand that this is an erroneous sequence being received. Okay, so there is an error. So the receiver will understand that the stream received is erroneous. Okay, similarly it continues the decoding process. The next 3 bits received are 011. 011 is a valid code vector and the corresponding symbol is B, so it decodes the sequence as B. Similarly for the next 3 bits we have 010. 010, if you observe the table, 010 is not a valid sequence again, so receiver understands that there is an error, and so on. Okay, therefore there were 3 erroneous bits in the sequence corresponding to 3 different symbol representations, and the receiver can able to detect all 3 errors. Okay, it could only able to detect the error. I have not explained how the error can be corrected by the receiver. Okay, so this is a simple example just to make you understand that adding computed addition of redundancy would facilitate the receiver to detect the presence of error. Okay, so that is why channel coding is very much essential. Okay, so not only source coding is done at the sender side for encoding the analog symbols into digital sequences. Along with the source coding, channel coding is also required so as to make the receiver able to detect the presence of errors, if any. So representing the same in a pictorial form, we have something like this. This is the complete code space where each code sequence is of 3 bits. Therefore, we have 8 possible combinations: 000, 001, 010, 011, 100, 101, 110 and 111. Out of these 8 possible combinations, we have used 4 possibilities. We have used the combinations 000, 101, 011 and 110. Okay, so that subspace forms the valid code space. Okay, so that subspace forms the valid code space, and if any of the vectors in that valid code space is received by the receiver, it accepts that sequence and decodes the corresponding symbol. If any other vector is received other than these 4 sequences, then the receiver can make out that error is present. Channel coding or error control coding is therefore a process of adding calculated amount of redundancy to the code sequences so as to facilitate the receiver to detect and correct errors if any. Okay, so error correction is also possible depending upon the sophisticatedness of the error control coding being used. Okay, so there are two broad categories of error control codes. One is block codes, the second one is convolution codes. Okay, so we'll first discuss a few details about block codes, then we can move on to convolution codes. Okay, so block codes consider a block of information for encoding. Okay, so it considered a fixed length blocks. It takes a fixed length blocks as input. Okay, so applies some mathematical expression to get the parity sequences and appends that parity to the information sequence and forms a code sequence. Okay, so in general, a block of k bits of input is considered at a time for encoding. Okay, and from that k bit of information we generate an n bit code sequence. Obviously n will be greater than k because we are adding some redundancy there. Okay, so one of the simplest examples for block codes would be repetition codes, where a single bit is represented with more number of bits. That means repetition, we are sending the same bit multiple times. Okay, therefore there are very less chances that all those replicas will get erroneous while transmitting. Say for example, so instead of sending 0, we can send 3 zeros. Okay, so even one bit goes wrong, even if you have received 100, then the receiver can able to make out that the sequence is 0, because majority out of 3 we have 2 bits representing 0 and 1 bit is representing 1, majority is representing 0 still, correct? So the receiver can able to make out that the transmitted bit is 0, although there was an error amongst one of the bits. Okay, similarly 1 can be transmitted as 3 ones, it can even be more, 0 can be transmitted as 5 zeros, so that even 1 or 2 zeros go wrong, we can able to detect the error. Our discussion would be incomplete if we do not remember this famous personality Galois. He has proposed a finite fields which is also called as Galois field. Okay, so which is the foundation for any of the modern error control coding techniques we use. I'll now give you an insight into one of the very popular block codes called as linear block codes. As the name itself is indicating, linear block codes are a set of block codes which take k tuple information at a time, n codes, and generates an n tuple code sequence. Linear block codes are a set of block codes where the linear combination of two or more code sequences would also result in a valid code sequence. That means to say, if I combine two or more valid code sequences linearly, the resultant is also a valid code sequence. Generally, we represent linear block codes by two tuple information n and k, where n indicates the number of bits in the code sequence and k indicates the number of bits in the input sequence. And we consider a matrix called as generator matrix of dimension n by k to generate the code sequences for a linear block code. We generate a k dimensional subspace of vector space Vn of binary n tuples, and we have one more matrix called as H, that is parity check matrix, which is used to detect the error and even to correct the error to some extent depending upon the distance property, depending upon the values of n and k. H matrix is a dual space of G matrix. That means if I take a vector from the space G and take a vector from the space H, okay, so then this H space vector is a dual of the vector from G space. That means if I multiply that G into transpose of H, I'll going to get a zero vector. Okay, so this is the property that is being used to detect the presence of error. Let us now consider an example for a linear block code. I have taken a very simple example of only 4 code words being considered. Okay, so if you observe here, the linear combination of any code sequences would also result in a valid code sequence. Say for example, if I add 111000 with 000111, I'll get a code vector of all ones, which is also a valid code vector, correct? So if I consider all ones with the 000111, the resultant vector would be 111000, which is again a valid code vector, correct? So likewise, even if I consider the combination of 3 code sequences 111000 all ones, I will get all 0 vector, which is again a valid code sequence. Okay, so therefore any combination of code sequences, linear combination of code sequences, would result in a valid code sequence, hence it's a linear block code. Okay, so pictorically if I represent in the complete vector space of n tuple vectors, we have a subspace, okay, so comprising of 2 to the power k n tuple vectors. Why 2 to the power k? Because each data is of k bits, so I have 2 to the power k possible data sequences. For each of a valid data sequence, we have a valid code sequence. Okay, so therefore we have 2 to the power k valid code sequences. Out of how many? It is an n tuple representation, so I could have 2 to the power n possibilities, out of which only 2 to the power k are valid code sequences. Okay, so that is the subspace, and that subspace will be generated by the generator matrix. So generator matrix gives me the basis set for that vector space. I'll define one more parameter called as systematic codes now. Okay, so any code sequence is said to be a systematic code if at all I can able to separate the data with the parity. Okay, so given a code sequence, if I can able to make out what is the data from that code sequence, such codes are called as systematic codes. Therefore, for a systematic codes, the pattern would be either the data concatenated with the parity at the end, or parity appended with the data. Okay, so we have two possible representations. The parity bits either can come at the beginning of the code sequence or at the end of the code sequence. Okay, so for a typical n comma k block codes, linear block codes, we have k bits of information being encoded into n bits of code sequence. Therefore the code sequence will be either of the form k information bit concatenated with n minus k parity bits, or n minus k parity bits concatenated with k bits of information. So we can represent a typical n comma k linear block codes like this. We have a data sequence of k bits long, which will be encoded as a code sequence of n bits long. For a systematic linear block codes, we will have either the first k bits or the last k bits of the code sequence being the data. So in this particular case, we have considered the first k bits of the code sequence as the data sequence. Therefore, C1, that is the first bit of the code sequence, is the first bit of the data, D1. C2 is D2, C3 is D3, so on. The kth bit of the code sequence, CK, is equal to DK. That is the last bit of the input sequence. Now, the remaining n minus k bits are the parity bits that are obtained based on the input. Okay, so we are calculating the parity which is dependent on that k input bits that we have fed into the encoder. Okay, therefore, Ck plus 1, Ck plus 2, so on, Cn, they are all the parity bits obtained based on the input sequence with some linear combinations of the input bits. In order to detect the error in the received sequence, we need to consider a parameter called as syndrome. Syndrome is nothing but the received vector multiplied with the transpose of the parity check matrix. S is equal to R into H transpose. We also have to remember that H is a dual space of the vector space G. Therefore, G into H transpose is equal to 0. We have the code sequence C is given by data into the generator matrix D into G. Therefore, C into H transpose is also equal to 0. Now, for calculating the syndrome, we have considered the relation S is equal to R into H transpose. Okay, so only when this R is equal to C, that means only if the received vector is a valid code vector, then we will get a zero syndrome. Only if the received vector is a vector from that vector space G, which is corresponding to the valid code vector, we will get a zero syndrome. Otherwise, we will get non-zero syndrome. Okay, so that is the idea. That can be explained as follows. We have R is the received vector, which is nothing but the transmitted vector plus error. This error vector can be either 0 or non-zero depending upon the situation of the channel. C is the code sequence that is transmitted. Okay, so if I expand that, that becomes C into H transpose plus E into H transpose. We have already mentioned that C into H transpose is 0. Therefore, syndrome becomes E into H transpose. Therefore, the syndrome is dependent on the error pattern. Okay, so if error is there, if E is not 0, then syndrome will be not 0. If E is 0, if there is no error, then syndrome will be 0. Okay, so based on this, I can able to make out whether error is there or not. Okay, so if you have a 0 syndrome for a given received vector, then that implies that the received vector is proper, that is a valid code vector. Okay, so if we get a non-zero syndrome for a given received vector, that implies that there is an error in the received sequence. Okay, so yes, not only makes us to understand whether error is there or not, to some extent we can even able to locate the error. Okay, so if you observe that expression S is equal to E into H transpose, okay, so that gives you some information about the vector E, right? So if you have a single bit error, that means if only one of the bits in that vector E is 1 and if all other bits are zeros, then I can not only able to detect the error, I can even able to locate the error, correct? So I can able to locate that particular bit which is 1, because the corresponding row after multiplying E into H transpose, the corresponding row in the H transpose is retained as a syndrome. Okay, so based on that, I can even able to locate errors if it is a single bit error. In order to make out the error detection and correction capability for a given linear block code, we need to define some parameters in terms of distance. Okay, so let us first define a few distance metrics for a linear block code. Then based on that, we can able to make out the capabilities of that code in terms of error detection and error correction. Okay, so the first distance parameter is Hamming distance. Hamming distance between any two code vectors is nothing but the number of bit positions in which they are different. Okay, so it is the number of bit positions in which they differ. Okay, so for example, if you consider the vectors 0 0 0 and 0 1 1, we have 2 bit positions in which these code vectors are different. Therefore, the Hamming distance between these two code vectors is 2. Similarly, if it is 0 0 0 and 1 0 1, again we have 2 bit positions in which the vectors differ. So, Hamming distance is 2 here as well. And I have given you some more examples considering the blocks of length 5. In the case of vectors being 5 zeros and 0 1 0 1 1, the Hamming distance is 3 and so on. Okay, so only requirement here is that both vectors are to be of the same length. In order to determine the Hamming distance, we need to have the vectors to be of the same length. Then we have one more definition called as Hamming weight. Hamming weight gives the number of non-zero entries in the code. Okay, so for a given vector, how many non-zero entries are there in that vector is called as Hamming weight of that code. Okay, so for binary case, Hamming weight is simply nothing but number of ones in the code sequence. And finally, we have one more definition, minimum Hamming distance. Okay, so that is the measure of minimum amongst all distances, Hamming distances. That means considering Hamming distance of each code vector with each of the other code vector in the set, whichever value is minimum, that is called as minimum Hamming distance. Okay, so this is a very important parameter in the sense that more the distance separation between the code vectors, better will be our error detecting capability. Correct? So what is the idea? We can able to detect the error if and only if the received vector is not a valid code vector. Okay, so we can keep on detecting the errors as long as the error pattern has not converted one valid code vector into another valid code vector. Okay, so that is dependent on how many bit positions any pair of code vectors are different in. Correct? So more is that value, more number of errors I can able to detect. Okay, so therefore D minimum is an important parameter which determines the error detecting and correcting capabilities of any linear block code. So based on these definitions, now we can formally define the error detecting capability as well as error correcting capability of a linear block code. So as I have mentioned already, as long as a vector received is not a valid code vector, I can able to detect the error. Okay, so as long as the error has not converted one valid code vector into another valid code vector, I can able to detect the error. Okay, so one valid code vector will get converted into another valid code vector if and only if there is an error of D minimum number of bits or more. Therefore, as long as the error is less than D minimum, I can able to detect the error. Therefore, error detecting capability of a linear block code is given by D minimum minus 1. Similarly, error correcting capability of a linear block code is given by D minimum minus 1 divided by 2, the floor value of that. Okay, so that means to say I need to approximate that to the previous integer. Okay, so that is a brief insight into linear block codes. We have so many variants of linear block codes. We have cyclic codes, which are special cases of linear block codes. We have BCH codes, which are a special class of cyclic codes, and so on. Okay, so there are so many sophisticated linear block codes that are available for error control coding. Now, I will just give you an insight into another category of error control codes, that is convolution codes. The major difference between linear block codes and convolution codes is that convolution codes possess memory unlike linear block codes. Okay, so in case of block codes, a block of data is taken as the input. We take input as a k tuple information. Okay, and based on the mathematical calculation, we use to generate a code vector which is of n bits, and that entire n bit code vector is dependent on that k tuple information, that k bit information. Okay, so there is no memory. It takes the input, processes the input, and generates n bit code vector, irrespective of whether it is systematic code or not. Okay, whereas for convolution codes, that is not the case. Okay, so the present code vector is dependent not only on the present input but also on the previous inputs. Okay, so such encoders represent LTI systems, linear time invariant systems. Therefore, I can able to find the output of that system by performing the convolution of the impulse response of that system with the input sequence. Hence the name convolution codes, because they represent LTI systems. Okay, so the major difference between convolution codes and block codes is that convolution codes possess memory. In other words, output depends not only on the present input but also on the past input bits. We define code rate for a convolution code as k by n, where k is the number of input lines and n is the number of output lines. Okay, so there is a small difference between n and k in convolution codes with respect to block codes that we have considered earlier. In case of linear block codes, we used n and k to represent the number of bits in the output, that is the code sequence, and number of bits in the input respectively. Whereas here that is not the case, because the length of the input as well as code vector is not fixed for convolution codes. Okay, whereas for block codes they were fixed. Okay, so here n indicates the number of output lines, not the bits in the output sequence. Okay, and k indicates the number of input lines. So in convolution codes, therefore, if I apply an input at this instance of time, that input has its impact in the generation of the output for not only at this instance of time but also for future instances of time. Correct? Depends for how many future instances of time. That depends on what? That depends on the number of memory elements I have in that encoder. Okay, so therefore depending upon the memory element, if I apply an input bit at this instance of time, it has its impact in the code vector calculation not only at this instance of time but also in the future instances as well, and that is dependent on the number of memory elements. Okay, so based on that we can define one more parameter of convolution codes, that is constraint length. So a constraint length is nothing but the number of output bits that are affected by a single input bit. That means to say, if I apply an input at this instance of time, how many output bits are affected by that input bit. Okay, so that is given by constraint length. Finally, for convolution codes also we can have either systematic codes or non-systematic codes. Okay, so we have already defined what systematic codes are, correct? So systematic codes are those codes where I can separate information and parity, whereas for non-systematic codes I cannot do that. So this is an example of a convolutional encoder. This is an example for a 2 comma 1 comma 2 convolutional encoder. Here n value is 2, that means we have two output lines. K is 1, that means we have one input line, and m is 2. M indicates the number of memory elements, so in this case we have two memory elements. Okay, so here we have two output lines, one input line, and two memory elements. Therefore it is a 2 comma 1 comma 2 convolutional encoder. So there v1 and v2 are representing the output lines where we will get the code vectors. Okay, so there are various ways of getting the code vectors from a convolutional code. I will just give you a brief introduction of that. Convolution codes are very vast. Okay, so we need a separate discussion for discussing the features of a convolutional code. So we have various ways of finding the code vectors for a convolutional code. As I have already mentioned, convolutional codes are LTI systems. So convolutional encoder is an LTI system. We know that for any LTI system, the output of an LTI system is given by the convolution of input with the impulse response of the system. Impulse response of the system is defined as the output of the system when the input is an impulse function. Okay, so here also we can make use of the same property. I can able to find the output of the convolutional encoder, which is nothing but the code word, either v1 or v2 in this case. That depends on the number of output lines in general. Okay, so I can able to find the sequence v1 or v2 by convolving the input sequence. Input is the message for which I need to find the code vector with the impulse response of the encoder. Therefore, in order to find v1, I need to find the impulse response of the encoder pertaining to the output line 1. Similarly, in order to find v2, I need to first find the impulse response of the encoder pertaining to output line 2. Okay, so finding impulse response, I can make use of the normal procedure, apply an impulse function, that is 1 followed by zeros, and get the output at lines v1 and v2. That gives me the impulse responses pertaining to the output line v1 and v2. However, we have an easier option as well. By just observing the connection pattern, I can able to write the impulse response sequences. For convolutional codes, impulse response sequences are also called as generator sequences. They are called as generator sequences because they are the sequences used to generate the code sequences. Okay, so impulse response sequences are also called as generator sequences. I can able to write the impulse response sequences by observing the connection patterns. Okay, so now if I observe the output line v1, v1 is the output of that summer top 1, where we have connections from the input, from the output of the first flip flop, as well as from the second flip flop. Therefore, the corresponding generator sequence is 1 1 1, because we have a connection from input, corresponding first bit is 1. We have connection from the output of the first flip, therefore the second bit is also 1, and we have connection from the output of the second flip flop, therefore the third bit is also 1. Okay, similarly for the second line v2, we have a connection from the input, therefore first bit is 1. We do not have connection from the output of the first flip flop, so the second bit is 0. Finally, we have a connection from the output of the second flip flop, therefore the third bit is 1. Hence, the generator sequence for the second output line v2 is 1 0 1. Okay, so now depending upon the data, you just convolve the sequences to get the corresponding outputs v1 and v2. Okay, so in this case we have taken an input being 11101, convolve that with the 111, we will get the sequence v1. In this case it is 101 0011. Similarly, convolve the input u with the g2, we will get the second sequence v2. Okay, so once v1 and v2 have been obtained, I can able to find the overall code vector v. Okay, so overall code vector v can be written as at the end of the first clock cycle. During the first instance, v1 is 1, v2 is 1. So the first two bits in the sequence v are 1 and 1. In the second instance of time, v1 is 0, v2 is 1. So v becomes 0, 1 during the second instance of time. Similarly, during the third instance of time, v1 is 1, v2 is 0. So the next two bits are 1, 0 and so on. Okay, so that is the sequence v. So if you observe here, this is the output sequence v. Okay, so this is linear convolution that you can verify. We have the length of the input being 5. The generator sequence length is 3. So the length of the output sequence v1 should be length of the input plus length of the generator sequence minus 1. That is, in this case it is 5 plus 3 minus 1 is 7. So v1 is of length 7. v2 also is of length 7. Therefore the overall v is of length 14. Okay, so while encoding 5-bit information sequence, we got a 14-bit code vector for this particular convolution code. Okay, so here input can be of any length, unlike for block codes. There is no restriction with respect to the length of the input. Okay, so depending upon the length of the input, length of the output also changes. So we have another way of finding the code sequence, like how we have used a generator matrix in obtaining linear block codes. We can have a generator matrix for convolution codes as well. However, the dimension of the generator matrix is not fixed here because the length of the input is not fixed for convolution codes. Okay, so constructing generator matrix from the generator sequences is very easy. So that is what is shown in this slide. So for the same case, we already have obtained the generator sequences as 1, 1, 1 and 1, 0, 1. So based on that, we need to first write the first row of the generator matrix by considering the bits of the generator sequences bit by bit. Okay, so consider the first bit of the first generator sequence and first bit of the second generator sequence. That becomes the first two bits of the first row of the generator matrix. Okay, so in this case, the bits are 1 and 1. Therefore, the first two bits of the first row of the generator matrix are 1, 1. Similarly, second bit of G1 is 1, second bit of G2 is 0. Therefore, the next two bits of the first row of the generator matrix are 1, 0. Similarly, third bits of G1 and G2 are 1 and 1 respectively. Therefore, the last two bits of the first row of the generator matrix are 1, 1. Okay, so that is all about the first row of the generator matrix. The number of rows required in the generator matrix is dependent on the length of the input, correct? Because the code vector C or V is given by input multiplied with the generator matrix. Okay, so therefore the number of rows required in the generator matrix should be equal to the length of the input sequence. Okay, so depending upon the length of the input sequence, we need to construct so many number of rows in the generator matrix. To construct the further rows of the generator matrix, what I need to do is I need to just shift the first row of the generator matrix by n number of times. N gives you the number of output lines. Okay, so shift the first row of the generator matrix by n number of times to get the second row. Linear shift. Okay, similarly, shift the second row of the generator matrix by n number of times to get the third row, and so on. Okay, so you shift the rows to as many number of times as there are number of bits in the input sequence. Okay, so in this case the length of the input sequence is 5, so we require 5 number of rows. So the generator matrix for the given 2, 1, 2 convolution code is given in this slide. Now you just multiply the input with the generator matrix, you will going to get the code sequence. You can verify that you have got the same sequence here as that of the one we obtained using time domain approach. There is one more method of finding the code vector. We know that convolution in time domain is equivalent to multiplication in transform domain. So we have seen how to obtain the code vectors by performing convolution in time domain. Okay, so we can just convert the sequences into transform domain sequences, that is in terms of polynomial domain. Then you just perform the multiplication. That is also possible. Okay, so if you use this method, we need to first write the corresponding polynomial representations of the sequences. Okay, so for the given example, G1 is 1 1 1. Corresponding polynomial representation would be 1 plus x square. Similarly, G2 is 1 0 1. Corresponding polynomial representation would be 1 plus x square. Okay, so now for the given data in polynomial domain, you perform multiplication with G1, you will get V1 of x. Then if you multiply the polynomial of the input with G2 of x, you will get V2 of x. Okay, then finally the overall code polynomial V of x is given by this expression. Okay, so you can observe that in this case also you will going to get the same sequence. After getting the polynomial, code polynomial V of x, write the bit equivalent of that, bit sequence equivalent of that. That gives you the code sequence. Okay, so which should be same as that of the one which we have obtained using time domain as well as matrix approaches. As convolution codes possess memory elements, we have various ways of representing convolution codes. Okay, so we have a state transition table for a given convolutional encoder depending upon the connection pattern. Based on the state transition table, I can able to write state diagram, tree diagram and trellis diagram. Okay, so please note that we can able to find the code vectors for a given convolutional encoder using any of these representations also. I can able to find the code vector for a convolutional code from its state transition table or its state diagram or its tree diagram or even from its trellis diagram. Okay, and for decoding also we have various ways of decoding convolution codes. We can either make use of a tree diagram representation of the convolution code to decode the input sequence from the given received vector, or I can make use of trellis diagram to decode the message sequence from the given received vector for a given convolutional code. So in this presentation, I have made an attempt in giving you an insight into a digital communication system, the need for error control coding technique in any digital communication system. We have seen two types of error control codes, namely block codes and convolution codes. We have seen how block codes can be generated and how many bits of errors a typical n, k block code is capable of detecting and capable of correcting. We also have discussed about convolution codes, how convolution codes are different from block codes, and how can we able to get the code sequences for a given n, k convolutional code using various approaches. These are some of the references that I have used during the preparation of my presentation. I hope you have got some inputs on error control coding in any communication system from this presentation. I once again thank Rajiv Institute of Technology Hassan for giving me this opportunity to present before you a few points on error control coding in communication system. Thank you one and all for patient hearing. Thank you very much.